Welcome back to Let's Talk Adoption. I am Kim King, and I am so excited about today's episode, Empowering Adoptees with Resilience. I am really excited to talk with our special guest today, Tammy. And this episode today is all about helping adoptees build resilience, healthy self-esteem, a strong foundation for navigating life's challenges. And I'm excited to welcome Tammy Young. Tammy is a certified wisdom coach, educator, and adoptive mom of three. And after more than 20 years of teaching children of all ages, she now helps kids develop the mindset skills they need to thrive. Through story-based coaching, which she'll explain what that is, Tammy equips children with tools to build confidence, overcome fear, and become their own best friend. As an adoptive mom herself, in fact, a three-time adoptive mom herself, she brings both professional expertise and professional experience to this conversation. Tammy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Tammy, I mentioned you are an adoptive mom. So, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your family.
Thank you. Well, I have, as you said, three, I like to say adopted, but in different ways. So I have a diverse family. We are a transracial family, and each one of my children came through the blessing of adoption in a different way. So my first adoption was a private domestic adoption, and we were blessed to arrive at the hospital 20 minutes after he was born. So he's bigger than me now. All of my children are in their 20s, but he's still my baby. My second child was adopted internationally, and I did something you're not supposed to do, and I understand why now. We adopted out of birth order. So my second child was actually older. He was a waiting child, waiting in an orphanage in Kazakhstan. So we traveled to Kazakhstan to meet him. That was my second child, my oldest, and he is still brilliant. When we met him at the age of 4, they told us he's very clever. He's still very clever. He's in his 20s and working in the Virginia area, having a great time down in the Washington, D.C. area. And our third adoption was my daughter. She came through DCF. So she was a foster adopt situation. So those were very different experiences. And I like to say each was their own blessing, because I learned a lot about the process and about what helps me now, about how families sort of move through the adoption process, because they could face all kinds of different interesting stories and challenges. And I think that helps me now as a coach, because I can understand how families are formed in so many different ways. And I'm open to listening, which I think is so important, and asking questions and talking about what families' experiences are. So that's a little bit about how my adoption experience has helped me in what I do now as a coach.
As you were talking, I just thought and saw clearly how the Lord has uniquely equipped you for this role you are in now through these very different adoption stories that became your family. And not only that, but your background as an educator and just having a heart for children. So, what led you from education into coaching? Coaching children is not something you hear about a lot other than sports, right?
Right,
Athletics.
right, exactly. In some ways, it's kind of I don't want to say it's a new field, because life coaching has been around for a long time, but life coaching for kids, I think, is still kind of a new focus. I say that the group, the Adventures in Wisdom business, has been around for a couple decades, but they are still growing globally. And I think that most of the wisdom coaches, people who are life coaches for kids, are still raising eyebrows. And And then there are people who say, wow, what a great idea. Of course, this is helpful for kids. Of course, kids need to understand the power of their own minds. And if you can help them with mindset skills, wow, they'll be so much better off. Yes, absolutely. So, in some ways, it's still kind of new, only because people haven't heard about it yet, but it's growing and traction is happening, and more people are recognizing, just like as you mentioned, sports coaches help kids physically every day to gain control over their own bodies. Mindset coaches, life coaches help kids understand the power that they have right in their own heads, to set their thinking in a way that empowers them in life and empowers them for success.
Hmm. And I love some of the things that we're going to be talking about today are found in the Bible, the power of the mind, the power of
Right.
your thoughts, and how important it is to take every thought captive, the power of
Yes.
the words, the spoken word, right? And
Oh,
what we say about
critical.
ourselves
Yeah.
verbally and mentally. So I know when we were preparing for the show, Tammy, we talked about how, there is biblical wisdom in your coaching and there's science. Science is just coming along slowly, but behind what the Bible has already said for
Right.
thousands of years, right?
Right.
So you're kind of just harnessing that and packaging it in a way that you can really help guide children. And I think it's a tremendous relief for parents, especially adoptive parents, right? Who kind
Right.
of can jump into parenting at different ages and stages and different situations as well. So that brings us to our topic today of resiliency. And how has being an adoptive mom shaped your passion for resilience and mindset?
I think that each one of my three children has really shown me that, and I think this is true for any child, regardless of how they entered a family, how easy it is for them to have negative self-talk, and how important it is to help them flip a switch in that self-talk to more positivity. And as a matter of fact, one of the sessions that I do with kids in my package on resilience focuses on that self-talk and coaches them in to catch it, don't let it go, flip the switch, so that you are always kind to yourself. And I think that's biblical as well, is that you need to be kind to others, but also to yourself,
Hmm.
that you shouldn't just be kind to others and not pay attention to your most important connection, which is your own heart.
Hmm.
Um, your most important connection is above, but if we really listen to him, he will tell us that we should approach everyone, including ourselves, with tremendous love and kindness. And that is one of the messages that I try to help kids really embrace when we talk about resilience skills, mindset skills, is that love that you want to share with others, you also should share with yourself, that you should
Hmm.
be your own very best friend.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit about identity in Christ being a big part of that
Mm-hmm.
because it's hard to love yourself without knowing why you love yourself and why you're valuable and who put the price tag on you,
Right,
who created you, who loved you first, right?
right,
So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But I first want to let people know how they can reach you so they don't have to wait till the very end or go to a separate website if they're listening on some third-party podcast site. So Tammy, how can people find you if they're interested in possibly having you as a coach for a child who was adopted or wasn't adopted, biological or through adoption?
right. They can find me on Facebook, but sending me an email is an easy, straightforward way. I have a special dedicated Gmail account that is Young Minds Story Coaching, all one, Young Minds Story Coaching at gmail.com, no spaces. So they can reach me through email that way. They can find me. I have a Facebook page, Young Minds Story Coaching on Facebook as well. or they could call me. And I readily give people my cell phone number. It's 860-966-7574. Call me, leave a message. I will call you back.
Perfect. I love that. Because what we love to do here is have not only educational, encouraging conversations, but make it easy for people to access the things that they need. So I love that you just put that right out there, right in the beginning. And if you're listening as adoptive parents, potential adoptive parents, be sure to jot that information down on your notepad or in your phone so that if you are wanting to explore this further, whether you're encountering challenges right now or just for good measure. We don't have to go to the gym just to lose weight. We can go to the gym for a lot of reasons to maintain our health, right? On multiple levels. And so you don't just need a mindset coach just for when things are going wrong, but how about before things go wrong? How about like be proactive and have a strong foundation? I think it's a wonderful service that you're providing. And actually, before I met you, I didn't even know this existed. So I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that don't. I'm sure you encounter that a lot too, even though this is your everyday work.
And again, because it's new, people don't know how it works or what it means and how it gets set up. So I want to say also up front that I am happy to take calls and call people back. There's no charge for an initial conversation. I don't, I'm happy to answer questions, to explain how does this work? What does this look like? Those are all legitimate questions, and I don't charge for those calls.
And I think too, because a lot of our listeners are faith-filled families, it's comforting to know that it's aligned biblically and that you are a Christian woman, Christian adoptive mom yourself. I'm a Christian too. So that's what we want to bring to more of into the world today, to glorify the Lord and equip people because we're all walking through this life together. We are running this race together. So I love that we can be confident in knowing that when someone reaches out to you, that everything will be aligned for them and how they're parenting. So let's jump in here to our first segment, unspoken thoughts.
Hmm.
What are unspoken thoughts? And by the way, you don't have to be an adoptee child to benefit from this. I think this is helpful for anyone.
Right. I think one of the, actually the first session that I do in I have a 5 session package that I do for resilience. And the very first lesson that I do with the children, this is after I talk with parents and explain to them what we're going to do. When I actually sit down with the children and we start reading a story and talking about the first thing that we're going to talk about, the whole process is to help them understand conscious thoughts versus subconscious thoughts. In other words, and it's called Who's Flying Your Plane? It helps them understand that there are programs that are sort of running automatically underneath your conscious thoughts that you might not even realize. And maybe that's because somebody once said to you, to use an example, oh, girls don't play sports or something like that. And so you might feel like, oh, I can't play sports because I'm a girl. What? That's not true. And if you think about it consciously, you'll say, I don't really think that. But that might be a subconscious program that's running underneath that's affecting how you behave, how you think. And if it is not how you really think consciously, then there's going to be this for lack of a better word, that this conflict that happens that's going to make you feel uncomfortable, like things aren't going to go well. You're not going to feel happy. You're not going to be comfortable with what you're trying to do because you have conflicting thoughts happening in your conscious mind versus this unconscious program that's running, that's messing with your mind. And there's a story for that that helps kids understand what all of that means. We can talk about conscious and subconscious as adults, but kids don't know what any of that means. So this is why stories work. And we know that Jesus used stories to help explain things that might be difficult to understand. This is the same process, using stories to help people say, oh, I get that. The sower sowed some seed and some fell on the path and some fell. This was last weekend's story in my church. That helped people who were farmers at the time understand the message he was trying to get across. This is exactly the same methodology. We use a story to help the children understand that there might be some kind of story running underneath where they're really thinking that's messing up what their conscious mind is thinking and what they're really trying to do. And once they recognize that, then they can start undoing those subconscious programs that are messing up what they're trying to accomplish. That's just an example of the first story that we do so that they can start getting control, maybe not a great word, but understanding of how their brain works and build pathways that are more effective, that are more getting them to where they want to be, that are more helpful for happiness and comfort in their everyday lives. Um, and when I'm reading them the story, and this is with every lesson that I do, I'm reading them a story, we're talking about the story, and at the same time, I send them an activity. So, this first story that's about the plane that runs with conscious and subconscious thoughts, who's running your plane, they're building a plane. It's a paper airplane, but they're coloring it and then they're building it. And there's instructions for how to fold it to make their plane, and they can color however they want to color it. It's got stars and whatever on it, however they want to color it. So they have activity that's keeping these hands busy. So these ears are open while the hands are making something. And at the end of our lesson, and we're having conversation about the plane and how it flies and how your conscious mind thinks that you're piloting the plane and the subconscious mind may be running a different program. They're making this plane. By doing that, all of this activity is building new neural pathways in their brain through the talking, the listening, and the activity with the hands. And at the end of the lesson, now they have something that's going to jog their memory. They have the plane. The plane that they made while we were having this conversation will always trigger memories of what we talked about. So, in that way, we're building new highways in their brain, new neural pathways that help them work through changing any of those automatic programs that don't serve them.
Hmm.
So there's a bit of an explanation of the kinds of things that we do in our lessons.
This is so powerful. And just for any child to receive this experience at a young age, to be made aware that there is conscious thought,
Hmm.
the things that you think that you are deciding, right?
Right.
And then there is subconscious, which sub is like a submarine right underneath,
Underneath, right?
right? Not so obvious. Not so obvious, but it's there running, even though you're only aware of the conscious. So
Right.
then when you're explaining this through the story, now they are aware of it. Because how can you conquer something that you don't know is there?
Right.
So
How can
it
you
is
fight
like,
that submarine under the water when you can't see?
yeah,
Right? Exactly.
exactly. It's like a paradigm shift that will change the way they look at their thoughts and the
Right.
world for the rest of their lives. It's invaluable.
And then
So,
they
mhm.
understand the power of their brain themselves. Like, oh, my brain is really powerful. I have these two different levels of thought. I didn't even know about that. It's brilliant. And I also try to bring that back to creation and help them understand how amazing they are as a creation. Can you imagine the creator that designed this incredible system? Wow.
Right. Wow, exactly. And so when we think about unspoken thoughts, sometimes it seems like, well, that could be things we're thinking that we don't really, they're very private things. We don't want
Mm,
to say it out loud. What about for children who were adopted? What are some unspoken thoughts that might be running around in their minds,
Mm,
not yet captive, right? They
right.
haven't gotten those into captivity yet, those thoughts. And what are some examples of those at different ages or stages for adoptees?
This is such an important point. I'm so glad you brought this up because this is an area where I think journaling helps. And so I really recommend to parents and also to the children that they journal, and maybe every night before they go to bed, they take a moment to think about something that may be sort of floating around and write it down and maybe bring it into the prayers that they do before they go to sleep. Um, and at different ages, I have heard different things from not just my kids, but I also teach Sunday school, and so I hear things like, you know, related to everything from why am I here? And I've heard that from kids of all
That's
ages,
a good question.
all backgrounds. Why am I here? Um, and also, how did I get here? And there are different levels to that as well. But also, um, what am I supposed to do then? So related to all of that, how did I get here? And what am I supposed to do? And that's a huge question. What am I supposed to do? There are many layers to that. What am I supposed to do today? What am I supposed to do in the future? How am I supposed, and this is the one that kids don't tend to come up with, but it's in there. How am I supposed to react to what I now know? And all of my children, my three, knew their stories from birth, from my 20-minute old baby to my 4-year-old to my 8-year-old daughter who had come through DCF. They all had different stories, but we were very open talking about yours, each one of them, your story. Each kid knew, this is my story. You can do with it what you want. You write your own ending. And I think that is somewhat empowering. I say somewhat because it's a scary thing, I think, for kids to say you write your own ending. Um, what does that mean? For my internationally adopted child, it changed over the years. He didn't want to go back to where he came from. He didn't want to know about it. I kept bringing it up, but he was resistant. Well, now he's in his 20s and he's decided he's going to travel back to Kazakhstan. I was shocked. Really? Oh, because he never wanted to. But I think it takes time. And his idea of how he was going to proceed in his story changed over the years. And I just sort of remained open to that. And I told him, I will go with you. No, 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 I don't want to go. Well, now he's going. I said, do you want me to go with you? No, I'm going with my friends. Okay, cool. You just never know. So my point in bringing that particular one up is that the story that these children are crafting, the end of their story, or even like the continuation of their story, will change over the years. And it's so helpful, I think, for them, for parents to just be open to whatever they say about how they want to continue writing their story or how they think their story might end. Um, it can be a little challenging, I think. And I want to recognize that for parents, adoptive parents out there, that it's, I don't want to say difficult, but because I never, I never took any of the comments that my kids made over the years as hurtful, because they don't mean to be hurtful. They just, they're trying to come to terms with who they are, who their own story, their identity, and especially in the teen years, that's so difficult. And my oldest had a tough time because he didn't look like most of the other kids in his class at school. And so he didn't look like us. So as I said, we're a multiracial family, and he he more than my other kids really struggled with that. So I just I want to encourage all families to just, to some extent, let the development happen and be as supportive as you can be, as difficult as it is sometimes. I think it's so healthy for kids to go through that process. But also, if you are supportive the whole time, they will know that they are safe with whatever they decide. Um, and I think that that can be really hard for some people because it's scary. It feels scary if your kid decides they want to go find their birth family and whatever they do, you're still family. So that, I think, is a powerful decision for parents to make, powerful for themselves as well as their child. I think that's so important to say for
I
everyone.
think the part of the sacrificial love of parents is allowing your child to be who they are, explore what they need to explore, without taking it personally. Because imagine the layer of complication it puts onto the relationship and the child's own self-discovery
Right.
when they have to also think, oh, my mom kind of takes things personally. Oh,
Right.
my dad never wants to talk about this. They shut me down. They change the subject.
Oh,
Instead of leaning in and listening, they drive the conversation and tell me what I should be thinking and feeling or why I shouldn't be thinking or feeling a certain way when I don't even know how I'm thinking or feeling. I'm simply exploring it.
right.
There's no decision. And even if I have a decision at 10, it could be different when I'm 18.
Exactly. It was different every year for my oldest. He was really working through a lot for him in particular because he came older and he came from a place where all of the records were closed. We had so little information for him, which broke my heart because I couldn't give him what I could give his younger brother, who had a lot of information and a lot of family background details I didn't have for my oldest. And so that also was a challenge because there was a difference in the amount of information available to my oldest versus my next son or my middle child, who was my first. Confusing, I know. But I think, the other thing that's important for kids and parents also is that there's no comparing. You can't really compare. The kids will, but I felt like I said it often that, well, you're all different and you all have different stories and you're all on different journeys. And it was just a very matter of fact, kind of no judgment about anything. Everybody has a different journey everywhere. People who are born to their family have different journeys. I'm the tallest one in my family. I'm not adopted, but it was really hard for me because I'm taller than everybody else. So it's just the
And
way it is.
and imagine if every time you brought up your height, they were like, "Well, we don't want to talk about that."
Right. Right.
Right? Or if they were like, "You're fine, you don't need to worry about that," and tell you how you should feel instead of just being like, "Oh, yeah, you are tall.
Right.
Yeah, you are."
Exactly.
And allowing them to explore that so they can love that about themselves and love every part of themselves, especially the things that were beyond their control, that they're blameless in.
Right. Oh, so many important things in what you just said. The power of acceptance and the power of releasing blame. There is no blame. Nobody made you except God. God made you the way you are. God made us all in his image. Wow. Which means we're all perfect. So I think that's a very powerful message for kids to hear as well.
hmm And I think this is just a lot for parents to think about, and that's why it's so good that there is a coach that can help and guide you and work with your child and who has the training and experience and the adoption connection as an adoptive mom yourself. Um, so how can parents recognize if there is something going on beneath the surface?
It's tough because sometimes, like my oldest son was just really quiet and he would just go in his room and not talk to us. And I, as you can tell, am a talker. And so I don't tend to let things go for too long. You know, he needed his space sometimes, and that was okay. And I wouldn't let too many days go by where I would let him stew. And then I would knock on his door, because usually his door was closed, especially when he was a teenager, when he was in high school and he didn't want to talk to any of us. I would go in his room, I would knock, and I'd go in and I'd just climb on his bed and sit next to him and say, hey, let's chat. And I think that even when I didn't have a particular subject that I wanted to pursue with him, that I would just go in and say, hey, let's chat. We haven't talked much. What's going on? It just allowed him to share or not share, depending on how he was feeling. And sometimes he would come out and say something I didn't expect, having nothing to do with his adoption, but maybe having something to do with something I didn't know was going on. Like, my son is a very talented artist, but maybe this was what happened one day. He likes a girl and he drew her a picture, and she didn't want to do anything. She took the picture and said thanks, and that was it. And he was crushed. And I was like, oh. And he thought it was his artistic skill that was not good enough. And I was like, I don't think so. But my point in sharing this story is that sometimes just making an opportunity, just go in and make an opportunity for them to share. There might be something happening that you don't even realize is happening. And if you give the opportunity, something will come out. Now, if I had known about life coaches for kids at the time that my son was a teenager, oh, I think I would have jumped right on that, because I think it would have been easier for him to talk to somebody who was not mom. I think that very often it is easier for kids to share with someone who has no skin in the game. You know, that it, I think in particular, things that are related to adoption can be scary for a kid to share, because they don't want to hurt their parents, but they think, oh, it could hurt my parents' feelings and I love them and I don't want to make them feel bad. So I think that there are several things in what I'm saying. First, leaving the door open to conversation if they're ready to share with parents is great, because of course parents are your first coach, always. If parents are feeling like, gosh, they're just not sharing, and I know there's stuff brewing under the surface, how can I get there? How can I make this happen? I think calling and talking about, what are you seeing? What's going on? Shall we try something? What, because I have several packages. I talk about the resilience package, but we also have packages about self-confidence. So my son, who always worried that his drawing wasn't good enough or he wasn't a very good artist, and he works in design now, he works for the federal government. And so I say, see what I mean? You're really good. I still say that. He's 26 years old. Those are the kinds of mindset skills that coaching can help. Confidence, resilience, any sort of mindset, friendship. If someone is struggling with, if they've been bullied or been a bully, which is heartbreaking for a parent, but it happens. All of these things happen in the teen years. And parents feel like, I don't want to just keep punishing. If my son is a bully, I need to do something, because obviously there's something going on that I'm not sure how to fix. Bullying tends to come out of self image problems, and it gets down to fear that I'm not good enough, so I have to hurt somebody else. Those kinds of things that we can work on with coaching. I usually like to also say to parents that, mental health is, it's kind of, mental wellness is kind of a line that goes from really good wellness down to to mental illness. And if you are too far down toward mental illness, you really need a therapist. So that is beyond coaching. Those are the kinds of things that I talk about with parents when they are looking at, do I need a coach, or should I be working with a therapist?
Hmm.
Therapists can do all of that whole line of challenges. But if you're on the mental wellness side and they could just use a boost, coaches are, I think, a good answer, because um, we tend to approach the family like a team, and we work very closely with parents to look at, this is a this is a family effort. So we do intake with the parents to talk about, what are you seeing, what would you like to work on, and and then we stay in touch through the whole process. So I said I have a 5 session package for resilience, and after every session I'm sending things back to the parents saying, this is what we did today, here are follow-up questions to do. I'm a big believer in, everybody comes together for dinner, let's sit down, let's talk over dinner, because when people are eating, they're not too worried because they're eating and they're feeling good about what they're eating, and they might talk about stuff and they're not looking at you because they're looking at their plate. They might actually share more. And if you have good prompts, questions that prompts, oh yeah, we did this, I made an airplane, it was really awesome. And then they'll share more about what they did in the time that we were working together, the coach and the child were working together. So I just threw a whole lot at you just then, but I felt like there was a lot that I wanted to share about that whole mental health versus mental illness continuum, that I think is really important for people to know, that because you hinted already that sometimes kids are in decent shape, but it just might be nice for them to have someone to talk to give them a boost. Absolutely. That's where a coach can really, just like an athletic coach can really get them to the next level.
Exactly. So, for example, you're not going to hire a track coach for someone that needs an ankle surgery. Get the
Right,
ankle surgery first, and
right.
then come back and hire the coach so they can take off and run that race.
Strengthen, right.
Yeah, exactly. So
Exactly.
I love that you gave that example of at the dinner table, because that sounds like one of the safest environments in our childhood, if we think about it, for sharing things that are going on. And that's something I know that is important to you, helping parents know how to create a safe environment for children to share difficult things.
Right. And I have, in the car is an amazing place to have a conversation. So he did a lot of sports. So I would be taking him to football practice, and now we're both looking out the window. We're not looking at each other. So it's not as intimidating, and we could have conversations, and he would share things with me in the car that he didn't share at the dinner table because nobody was looking at him. And we're both looking out the front windshield. So things like that, that I like to share with parents, to let them know I've been there. I understand that it can feel tough and sometimes even overwhelming, and you're not alone. That's the other thing that I want people to know. You're not alone. And you and I have talked about that already, that I tell people all the time, you are never alone. I tell the children, you are never alone, because you've got all these people around you who love you. We all support you. And we have our creator who is never far from us, ever, holding
Hmm.
us in the palm of his hand.
Hmm. So I love that you're tying it right into our next segment, identity in Christ. I think this is just something that parents need to be keenly aware of now more than ever. But why is identity especially important for adoptees?
Oh, so critical, because as I mentioned, my boys, I have 2 boys. One is Asian, one is Pacific Islander. My daughter is Italian. So none of them looked like each other, although people thought my boys looked, they both have black hair. I was like, well, that's really about where it ends. but they, because they all sort of had these different backgrounds, they felt sometimes kind of isolated, like they were alone. And so I thought that it was so critical to remind them, and again, I think this goes back to understanding how your mind works consciously. In their conscious mind, they knew they were part of our family. They knew that we were a close family. They knew that I loved them. They knew all that in the front of their mind. But maybe underneath, subconsciously, they had messages that were going on, some automatic program that was running that they weren't even conscious of, that was telling them, you're not good, you're not important. Who knows where these messages came from? They didn't come from me. They came from somewhere. And again, and you never know what kids are hearing in school. They might have heard, who knows what they heard at different times in school about being adopted. My kids are obviously adopted because they don't look like me. So maybe kids can be mean. Maybe somebody said something sometime about the beginning of their story, which may or may not have been true, but it's in there and it's sort of brewing underneath. And so I felt like I often needed to remind, especially my boys, how beautiful they are. My boys are beautiful. I think all children are beautiful. That's, I think that's part of my love that I have for all children. I think they are all amazing. Children are a blessing, beautiful from the moment they're born. Babies are so beautiful, and all of the switches flip in my head when I see a baby. Like, oh, I just think they're so amazing. Well, that doesn't change a whole lot as they get to toddler years. Even when they're being tough twos and threes, they're still so cute, and you can see how they're developing and they're learning and they're trying to figure things out, and that continues to grow and develop through their journey. And even when they get into those teen years where some people say, oh, teenagers, they're so tough. Well, they are, because they're trying to figure things out, but they're on their journey and they're making their way, and they may be thinking, I'm really ugly. And so I make it a point for all children to encourage them that they all are beautiful, that they all have their own special talents, that everybody's different. Nobody looks, even twins. I have cousins who are twins and they don't look exactly the same, even though they look alike, but they are still different. And they still each have their own special skills and talents. And this is what I tried to instill in my own children. And I try to help other children as a teacher as well understand everybody's different. Everybody's on their own journey. Maybe she reads really well, and maybe you struggle a little bit with reading, but wow, you're so good at math and you'll catch up in reading, or whatever the different skills are. I think helping kids understand that there's still beauty in differences, and it's okay to recognize this person's talent in something that may be difficult for you, because you have this talent that might be difficult for them. And wow, it makes you a really good team. That kind of messaging, I think, is really helpful for kids so that they know when they get out into the world, when they get a job, that they're not going to be the same as their coworkers, but they're going to work well together as a team. That kind of messaging, I think they can take with them into adulthood.
Hmm. I love how you personalize it to each child and their particular talents and gifts. And overall, when we don't know yet what their talents or gifts will be, their first identity is in Christ because he created them on purpose for a purpose. And I'm just so thankful, like, I remember conversations from when I was really little, my mom asking my sisters and I, what is your purpose? Why are you here? And we knew it was to love and serve the Lord. And we were told that from the very beginning. And that is a foundation that has been unshakable for all three of us.
Even when you didn't understand exactly what that meant.
We didn't know the
What a
greater
blessing.
theology of it or where that means life will take us or anything like that. And then the gifts and talents follow suit.
That is
They
amazing.
emerge and they follow suit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are some ways that we can, you know, help children and nurture a Christ-centered identity? Because that has to become first. That has to be established first before their identity as an adoptee.
Mm-hmm.
Because your identity in Christ is unshakable because he's the creator of the entire universe, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, everything. And like there's a song that says, I'll never be more loved than I am right now because God's love is infinite,
Always. And from the
right?
beginning.
And
Yeah.
from the beginning, right? Yeah.
And I think that you bring up such a good point because I think, especially for adoptees, there are moments where they question, how could I be so loved if I had this loss? Because adoption starts in loss. There is the loss of the birth family. There is the loss, depending on the stories, there are losses. Adoption is kind of based on loss.
No matter how old they were,
Right.
births or older.
And so I've seen in my own kids that I've seen them struggle with believing in that infinite love when I had this loss. In particular for my daughter, because she came through foster adopt. And so she had a bigger challenge that she was getting through. She was a foster child until she was 8 years old. That's a long time, and that's
Mm.
pretty foundational. Um, and she's in her 20s now, but she still struggles with self-worth. And so I feel like that message that you just said has to be repeated again and again and again to really hammer home the truth of it and help some kids, like my daughter, to really believe it. And she'll say, "Oh, yeah, I know that." But then sometimes there might be a crack.
Mhm.
And I feel like even as an adult, she sometimes will question her own worth. And as a parent, I have to be ready to say, "Oh, you know," and she'll say, "Yeah, okay, yeah, I know." so so I think
We all need those reminders, right? How many times have you talked? Like I was talking to a lady in the gym the other day and she said, I'm just dealing a lot with rejection right now. I was like, you? What? How? How is that even possible? And she was
so
like,
true.
yeah, you wouldn't believe it. I deal with that. And she is a mature, strong Christian that has been walking with the Lord for years. So she knows and she encourages others, right?
Right. And
That we
that's
still
so
need,
important as a
yeah,
Christian to encourage each other. Oh, so beautiful.
yeah. So if parents are walking through some difficult questions with their children, what encouragement do you have for them?
I'm chuckling because I remember days where after I got everybody to bed, I would go into my room and say my prayers and say, "Oh, my Lord, I don't know how I'm doing this. I don't think I'm doing a good job. I just don't know how I can keep going." To remember, I would tell the parents again, I said this before, you are not alone. I have been there. Others have been there. God is with us. Jesus is walking next to us. I mentioned before to you that I love that Footprints poem. I love the visual representation of he is right here making footprints right next to ours every step of the way. And when it gets so very difficult that I'm not sure I can keep going, it was so helpful for me to remember he's there. And if I need it, he will pick me up and carry me. Oh, it makes me want to cry thinking about that because I know that is how he operates. I know he carries us when we need it. And I would encourage parents who are really struggling, it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel like you're having a bad day. Just know that he is carrying you. And we, many of us, have been there. And we know, and we will stand with you.
One of the cool things about that poem or essay, Footprints, is that the person who's writing from their point of view, having that conversation, right, with God, they're like, wait, why is there only one set of footprints there? And it's like, because I was carrying you. So they didn't
So,
even know they had been carried.
right. So the first thought is you left me. Oh
Hmm.
no, no,
Right.
no.
That's the lie, right?
Right.
And then God comes in with the truth. And
Right.
that's the identity in Christ.
I love that because
Hmm.
we are so quick to doubt, right?
Yeah.
We are so quick to say, why did you leave me? Why was I alone here? Oh, no, no. You are never alone.
Never for
Right?
1 millisecond.
Oh, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. So, the power of the mind, what is mental fitness? I know we've made a lot of comparisons to like athletics,
Right.
gym, running the race, track, hiring a coach. But what about mental fitness? What's that about?
I think that people don't realize that we are always working on mental fitness. We are, or more perhaps I should say, we have the opportunity to always be working on our own mental fitness. And I find myself, especially now that I have become a certified life coach, I find myself coaching myself. Put your power goggles on and change how you're looking at this. Because, like that footprints story we were just talking about, we can be quick to doubt, and we can be quick to doubt ourselves. And changing how we look at a situation, how we look at our own strength makes such a difference. And recognizing that we do have strength and we are capable and we can change the outcome of a situation by changing how we think about it, recognizing that we have the power to persevere through children having a rough day and feeling like I can't do this, Lord, I'm not sure I'm cut out for this, and saying, yes, I am, and he chose me to walk this path, and he chose me to parent these children, and I know that I am in the right place and he is with me. Changing my outlook is so powerful, and helping kids understand that they can change the way they see themselves, the way they see their journey is so powerful. And it can help them really build not just resilience, but confidence in what they are trying to do each day. And we have seen a difference in kids' grades going up, in kids understanding that they can do things like read. I'm never going to learn to read. Oh, yes, you will. And changing how you look at things is going to help. And my younger son thought he would never learn to read. And then all of a sudden it clicked and he loved to read, and he reads faster than, oh, he's in his 20s now, but he got to the point as a teenager, I couldn't keep up with him. He read so much faster than I did. Those stories, I think, help people realize the power of the mind and that they can change their journey by embracing their own strength. And helping parents do that will then turn around and help children also to embrace their own strength and in the end, have a happier time each day, happier school year, for example. If kids are really worried about going back to school in September, coaches tend to do back to school sessions that help kids get ready to meet new experiences, meet new people, meet new teachers. That's all scary. It's only scary because it's new and you don't know how to think about it yet. So put on those power goggles and get in there and you can do it. And that helps kids really do that.
I know you've got your furry friend there. The family members that remain now that your children are adults. Um, but that power goggles tool is so cool because I can imagine 30 years later, they encounter a rough day and they're like, oh, I need to put on my power goggles. And
As I
suddenly they
said,
can do it.
I do
Yeah.
the same and it works.
And the reality is, okay, we're talking about, the power of the mind.
Hmm.
But sometimes children are like, okay, I know you say I can read, I can do this, but like literally right now I can't. And that's the truth. Right now, sitting in their chair with a book in front of them, they are not able to read right now, but they have to keep trying. And that comes down to neuroplasticity, right?
Right.
So, talk a little bit about that, how our brains can, how, so we know that the brain can adapt, right? So,
Hmm.
talk a little bit about that.
Right. So one of the things that I think is really helpful for kids, and one of the stories that we talk about helps kids recognize that, when you have something new that you're trying to do and you're afraid, your brain is thinking, oh, this is something new. I don't know how to think about this. So you want to the build the bridge, is what I would say to kids. Build the bridge in your brain to help your brain understand how to think about this. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use our imagination. It's this visualization. We're going to use our imagination and think about how you're going to feel turning that last page after you read that whole story. And maybe we read it together the first time in case you have some big word that you come across that you're afraid to read and you're not sure you can do right. But I'm here to help you. We're going to build that bridge and you're going to turn that last page. So, talking through all of that, helping them visualize reading that book, turning that last page, that visualization exercise helps build those neural pathways. And so, teaching them, we're building a bridge so that your brain knows how to do it, knows how to think about it. Then we practice it, and practicing adds more lanes to that bridge, adds more supports to that bridge. So pretty soon, you're going to be able to cross that bridge all by yourself. Going through that exercise of the visualization exercises that neuroplasticity and gets them to cross that bridge and build that neural pathway. And once they do it and they see how it works, they say, oh, then you can do it for riding a bike or skating or driving a car or whatever the steps are, that the scary things that they have to learn how to do. And they realize I can do scary things. I can build the bridges in my brain, and they can build those neural pathways themselves through visualization. And that gives them the skill, which is empowering in itself. So then they know they don't have to be afraid. And this, again, this comes right out of athletic coaching, that ski coaches talk about how to visualize going down that mountain. And once you've envisioned how you're going to go down that mountain, then you've got the bridge. Sorry, I've got a fuzzy coach over here telling me. Um, but again, that visualization builds the bridges that help them build those pathways in their brain and face those fears and get through them, which I think is an amazing skill for kids. That again, they will keep all the way into adulthood, because every time they start a new job, it's going to be scary, right? And then they have a set of tools that they can use to not be scared and just go in and do it.
And neuroplasticity is a term that's relatively new if you look at the timeline of human history.
Oh, of course.
And it's like another example of how science is just racing to catch up with the wisdom of the Bible, because the Bible is full of examples of people being told they were going to do things they didn't think they could do, and then they did them. And it's
Right.
historical document. Yeah.
Moses
Yes.
spread his arms and the water cleared.
So, what about mental health? So, neuroplasticity and mental health, because
Mm,
we're thinking like, oh, well, you can recognize that the word the is the word the if you train your brain. But what
right.
about your thoughts and mental health? How does neuroplasticity tie into mental health?
I think that, again, it is a building process, and it is a practicing, just like anything, that the teaching anybody, kids or adults, how to practice health. So making sure that you eat healthy and you exercise is a practice, and you can apply those same principles to mental health. Coaching myself to think positive thoughts, to have positive self talk, not to talk down to myself, not to discourage myself, but to encourage myself, to say, I can do this. I don't have to be nervous. Or if I'm nervous, to say, it's okay to be nervous. You got this.
Hmm.
Those kinds of coaching hints that you can put into your self talk repertoire to help boost your own um, nerves, boost your own positivity, I think, again, will stay with kids into adulthood.
Hmm. Yes, because usually negative self-talk isn't founded in truth at all, and
Right.
everyone else can see it except for ourselves or the child themselves.
Right.
So, what are some simple daily habits that families can practice together to help a child?
Yeah, I think that positive messages, anything from um, yellow stickies or whatever color stickies on the mirror to each other, to
Hmm.
themselves. So I have yellow stickies on my kitchen cabinets to remind myself when I'm getting up and having breakfast in the morning that I'm getting better and better every day.
Hmm.
That's a yellow sticky that I have on my kitchen cabinet for everybody in the house. Um, I think that for families, doing a positive message to each other over breakfast is so nice. I think when kids are young, positive notes in the lunchbox is a fabulous boost for kids, because in the middle of the day they pull out their lunchbox and, oh, there's a message from dad. Oh, yay. That's going to bring a huge smile, or a message from mom, or a message from my brother or my sister or whatever. I think that the same positive boost can happen with a, hey, good luck on that test you're taking today. Hey, good luck on the football, you know, I almost said auditions. No, not the
Tryouts.
football
I think
tryout.
it's tryouts.
I have too many things going on in my head. When the words start getting messed up, the choir tryouts, the
Yeah.
football tryouts, those things. Good luck with those kinds of messages, because in addition to the positivity, it helps them stay in touch with each other. So if you can talk about, I have football tryouts on Thursday. Oh, I have a choir audition on Wednesday. Then when we come back together for dinner, hey, how was your whatever you had going on today? There's a connection opportunity between kids, because it's so easy for the kids to just check out. Um, and I also had the rule of no phones at the table, which I got arguments, but I was like, nope, I don't have my phone at the table. You don't have your phones at the table. This is a no phone zone. 10 minutes, we'll be done eating in 10 minutes or 15 or whatever it was. And if I have watermelon for dessert, maybe you can come back or something like that. Um, no phone zone. And I used to tease my older son when he got into high school. I said, do you have a hot date tonight? Because otherwise, you don't need that phone. And if you have a hot date later, maybe we should talk about that. Or you can check after dinner. 10 minutes isn't going to cost you anything. So it became a sort of running joke because he was so shy. He was, he rarely had any dates, just, maybe on a Friday, but so it was kind of a
That's
silly
cute.
teasing way for me to kind of say no phones, but also kind of make him chuckle like, oh mom, um, the no phone zone meant that they didn't have anything that they were looking at, and that we could connect across the table, even if it was only for 5 minutes over dinner. And again, like I said before, if they're looking at their plate, they're not looking at you, they might actually share something. That was my experience.
I love that throughout this episode of Let's Talk Adoption, we've talked about the establishing of their identity and affirming their identity in a positive way. And it feels like the summary of our talk today is teaching children how to affirm themselves and
Right.
acknowledge when their thoughts need to be put in a cage and thrown out the window.
Mm,
Like, right?
right.
And then also habits and routines for how your child can be affirmed,
Mm,
and have a connection with those who know them and love them most, their family, right? These habits and little routines, the post-its and the notes and things. And then all under the umbrella of, well, no matter what, if everyone else disappears from my life, God is still with me, right? And
absolutely.
that doesn't need affirmation because that always was and always will be.
Right.
And
So true.
so, any advice for adoptive parents who are, maybe in the thick of it or about to enter into their season of parenthood for raising resilient children? Any last little words of advice and encouragement for them?
I think I would encourage parents to recognize their own resilience, and to make use of those tools that we've talked about to boost themselves, put on those power goggles, and change your own self-talk to remember that you're doing great, and you have a fabulous team behind you up there looking out for you, holding you in the palm of his hand, and with you on your journey.
Absolutely. And like what you illustrated with that footprints example,
Mm,
walking with you and sometimes carrying you when you didn't even know it.
right.
Yeah. So I appreciate you so much, Tammy. And can you share one more time how people can get in touch with you to have a conversation as to whether coaching might be right for their child or something that they want to keep on tap to reach out for?
Absolutely.
How
Thank you.
how can
Yes.
they connect with you?
Anybody can email me at youngmindstorycoaching, all no spaces, at gmail.com via email, youngmindstorycoaching at gmail.com. Or they could just call me 860-966-7574.
Well, thank you again, Tammy, so much for sharing your wisdom and the practical tools. I know that our listeners today at Let's Talk Adoption have been equipped with so much more than when they first clicked play on this podcast. So it's definitely been such a valuable conversation that I think is going to sit in the minds of adoptive parents and any parent, really. I think this conversation can be so helpful for any parent and even for themselves as adoptive parents who have probably been through a few challenges uh, to be where they are today.
Right.
So I appreciate it so much. And again, thank you so much to our listeners for listening to Let's Talk Adoption. You can always write to us at letstalkadoption.com. We welcome your feedback and advice, comments, and show ideas, suggestions, if you have any, at letstalkadoption.com. There on the website, you can write to us. And as always, we look forward to our next episode.